Our next presenter is a researcher from Sandia National Labs. Dr. Peter Choi has collaborated with the Purdue people in the past, and we're keeping our fingers crossed because we are working on a joint proposal as we speak. Peter.
It's been a while since I was actually working as a cybersecurity expert. Worked for Citibank, worked for Northrop Grumman. And one day I was walking down the hallway for looking at the RSA, attending the RSA conference. And I saw this Purdue professor with a bow tie giving a talk on cybersecurity. And I said, oh, okay, that's my alma mater. So I walked in there, and basically it was Eugene Spafford. And he just totally blew me away with his insight and eloquence in discussing cybersecurity issues. And the reason why I did not know about him was because I actually got my doctorate degree in physics. And so it was only after I graduated that I found out about Eugene Spafford and the CERIAS and all the wonderful work that he's been doing. And basically, it turns out that because of my physics background, I actually had an advantage over the normal computer engineers. Okay. When I first saw this picture, it really made me laugh, right? And but strange thing was, as years went by, that picture just kept coming back, and it was really bothering me. Okay, and I asked, what is actually a security? And when I looked up the Webster Dictionary, it says that security is a state of being free from fear, anxiety, danger, and doubt. Right? So looking at this picture, what you really have to do first is you have to figure out what it is that you're trying to protect. And once you figured out what it is that you're trying to protect, you have to then figure out who is actually threatening that asset. You know, who is driving around and why are they driving around? Right? Once you figure those two questions out, then you can go about designing your protection. Okay. Well, how do you know when you actually have successfully built your protection? Answer is really simple. If you can sit back and be able to relax and not have to fear, not have to have the anxiety, and not have to fear the danger or doubts. Okay. So how has our cybersecurity industry fared in terms of building our security? Cisco, former Cisco CEO, John Chambers, have been known to say that there are two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those who don't know that they have been hacked. It seems like a hyperbolic statement, but if you look at all the news, come on, that is almost a reality. Right? The thing about information security is that as long as businesses are able to make money and be able to provide a satisfactory restitution when things go wrong, everybody's happy. They are right back on the game. Humpty Dumpty is back on the wall. Okay. And the question that I wanted to ask is the Humpty Dumpty security really good enough for the cyber physical system. And when I say cyber physical system, I mean the system that not only moves electrons, but protons and neutrons, that actually has the kinetics. And the answer is, it depends. Okay? If you look at all the technologies that have been designed around securing information system, it's always basically dependent on redo, being able to push your redo button. Okay. So let me ask you this, are you willing to, let's say that you just had a newborn baby. Are you willing to allow autonomous vehicle to take your newborn baby back home? Okay. Most of you probably will say no, right? But what about on a connected vehicle? Okay. Maybe a few hands might go up. But what about cars with over 200 to 300 million lines of codes that haven't been checked, that haven't been vetted through any sort of security assessment? You might say, no, I won't. But guess what? Every single one of you are driving a car with 200 million lines of codes. Now, if you're talking about the Tesla car with the autonomous function, that's 300 million lines of code. Okay. InfoSec can help Lucy. I don't know if you've seen the Lucy episode where she was trying to do the quality check on a chocolate, right? And the line was going too fast and she was stuffing it in her mouth and all that stuff. Basically, cybersecurity was designed for securing information. It's not designed to secure your physical assets. Joshua Brown was a ex-Navy officer who used to dismantle the bombs during the Iraqi war. When he actually came out of the military, he started up an internet service provider business for the rural area, and he made lots of money. And he bought a Tesla car, and he loved the technology so much that he would regularly turn on untested autonomous driving functions. And he loved it so much, he died from the crash. Okay. Richard Feynman is my favorite physicist. He's been known to say that you cannot expect or designs to work in new circumstances. And I'm here to say that with the cyber physical system, especially with highly critical systems, let's say nuclear bomb, okay, you cannot rely on a redo technology of information security. So you might ask, okay, what technology can we use then, right? Let me just really quickly vector into history of cryptography. Okay? I think every one of you probably heard about Caesar cipher. Right? Basically, Caesar was using the Caesar cipher to send commands to their generals in the battlefield. And basically, it relied on sharing a secret, symmetric algorithm, okay? In this model, I have to trust myself and I have to trust the other party. They are going to keep that secret and secure the information. Okay, and we've been relying on the symmetric algorithm for millennia until 1973. Three fellows, Rivest, Ellerman, and Shamir, they came up with what they call asymmetric cryptography. It's basically relying on having a public key and private key pair. And the concept is basically, I can trust myself, but I ain't gonna trust anyone else. Okay, that significantly reduced the risk. Okay, at Sandia, what we are doing is we're taking that concept all the way. We're basically saying, you know what? I'm not gonna trust myself. I'm not gonna trust anyone else either. How does that make any sense, right? In building a secure technology. There is actually a US patent being issued on this. And also there are IEEE papers that you can look up. But now, how do we actually apply this concept? The picture you're seeing in here, if you go to the YouTube link, it's essentially a picture of Tesla cars, basically flashing light as it's getting its firmware being updated through their Starlink satellite communication. Okay, and it looks really simple, right? And if you look at the history of Tesla updating their firmware in 2021, they actually had more than 160 firmware updates. Now, can you imagine if you have to take your car into a dealership every time you needed that firmware update? They're not going to be able to sell any car, right? And other automotive industry, competitors are catching a wind of it. And just last year, Volvo announced that every single car that they are going to produce will have the over-the-air update, firmware update process being built into every one of their car. Okay. Now, they may have actually claimed that that's what they want to do, but are they really able to do that? Turns out, Tesla has a significant advantage. They have complete control over all their ECUs, electronic control unit. These are miniature computers that go into a car. Okay. Other automotive industry do not have that advantage. Okay. One day I was listening to the automotive executive talking about their modern electric vehicle, and he was holding up a phone, and he was saying, "Whoa, our EVs are much like this phone with a wheel." And I'm here to tell you, Mr. Executive, he is completely wrong about that scenario. Okay, what we have, if you are driving a modern car, you have at least 100 to 150 electronic control units. Okay, they are all pretty much manufactured by independent companies with their proprietary codes. They are being produced all over the globe. So you don't just have one phone, okay? You actually have like over 100 different types of phones with different platforms, different operating systems, different software being built into it. Now, can you imagine if you want to do an automated over-the-air firmware update? Basically, what the auto manufacturer has to do is they have to go to every one of these ECU OEM tier 1 provider and says, "Can we please get your private key so we can update your firmware?" Well, then they say, "Well, wait a minute. How do I get a guarantee that you're not going to share my code with my competitor? And how are you going to guarantee that you're not going to discount the purchase price using this knowledge of our code," right? And so they are having a significant difficulties. First of all, the tier one providers, they want to actually have a control over their code. Whenever they have a new firmware update, they want to be the one that actually updates that information, and they don't want to share that key, right? So, Vorbo, good luck. I hope they can achieve it, okay? Now, in my 25 some years of experience in the cybersecurity, I actually was responsible for testing out world's first e-commerce model, where it involved 5 big international banking infrastructure all the way to the vendor. It was called the NATA interoperability test. So we were testing out how do we actually build an e-commerce model based on public key infrastructure and not have to lose their transaction business to Visa and MasterCard, right? So I was responsible for that. And I was also responsible for assessing and providing a security architecture for the Citibank's very first e-bank system. It was called the direct access. And when I was working at Northrop Grumman, I was responsible for securing a military application called a Blue Force tracking system. It was a satellite system that would communicate with the Humvees and tanks that are being deployed in Iraq, okay? And because they are deploying in the enemy territory, they had to make sure that all information being broadcasted and received by the satellite is encrypted. However, they had significant problem. This is a broadcast system, which means if the command goes out from the satellite to the fighting platforms, there are 100,000 platforms. If enemy gets hold of one platform and compromises that key, then they compromise the whole system. So we were bashing our heads with NSA and trying to figure out how do we actually handle this situation, right? So basically, I'm saying that I am extremely familiar with both of these topics, and they are difficult and hell of a complex problem to solve. Okay? Oop. Yeah. So over here, we're calling it zero trust application without the use of PKI and KMS. And this is how we're trying to provide a solution by creating a system that can provide security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and authenticity all in one shot of packet of information. It's sessionless. And we can do this without the use of PKI or KMS. Okay. Again, if you really want the detail, you can read my IEEE papers. However, for those of you who wants a quick explanation of this, in our intestine, we actually have what they call the microbiome. Okay? It's bacteria that digest our food. Okay? And it turns out that there are anywhere from 10 to 100 trillion microorganisms living inside of us. Okay? to get some sense of that number, in our Milky Way galaxy, there's about 100 to 400 billion stars. Okay, we have a whole different universe right here. Now, if we are able to create identical apples, 3 identical apples, completely identical, okay, down to the molecule, and you feed it to 3 different people, and when I say people, I mean like even the identical twins, okay, and they eat this, and they output bacterial output, okay. It turns out that because of our unique microbiome, our output is going to be uniquely attributable to that human being. Okay. Now, in nature, we do not know how to clone that microbiome. I can't just clone it and give it to someone else. Okay. But in our digital hardware space, that is possible. Okay. So in here, what we're doing is we would actually create a dynamic non-repeating data, clear text. You run it through our hardware, and this hardware will actually have this microbiome engine that is unique to that hardware, and it will be able to digest that information and spit out a digital signature of that data. And even though the dynamic data is 1 to 3, and it's actually given to the 3 different hardware, the digital signature that will come out will be completely different, one from another. Okay. And another advantage is when we are creating this digital hardware identity, we actually have an option of cloning it. Now, we have to control that cloning very, very carefully. Once that hardware is cloned, then we lock it up, and you will never be able to actually clone it unless you actually physically penetrate each transistor and figure out, oh, this is 0, this is 1, this is 0, 0, 0. Okay. Oop. Inner workings of our Z-cryptographic engine. Well, basically what we have in here is we're be able to mimic our natural microbiome in our hardware. Okay. I believe that the slides are going to be available to people, so you can actually take a look at it and compare that with our publications to figure out exactly what's going on. One of the key point in here is that the input data has to be non-repeating. In other words, it has to have like a Unix time that will never repeat itself in order for you to actually get a different encryption key. So in here, what we are doing is we're using this microbiome engine to generate unique encryption key, and we're using that key to encrypt the data and send it to a recipient with the clear text of the non-repeating data attached to it. And then the recipient, which will have the exact same cryptographic engine, will take that clear text and digest it and reproduce the decryption key. And if it is successfully able to decrypt it, then it has done the decryption, it has done integrity check, it has done authenticity. Okay, and we also have availability, a real-time verification without ever having to go to check your identity with a certificate authority. Okay. This is very similar to the HMAC protocol. Now, many of you probably haven't heard, but Amazon actually uses this quite a bit. Oh, okay. Amazon actually uses this because it has the efficiency of not having to rely on the PKI. Okay. However, it does not provide confidentiality. And their authentication is really, really weak. Okay. This is how we would actually use our zero trust application. And basically, if you go through this model, you'll see that it actually reflects back to that other diagram with the exact acronyms and definition of how things are done. Okay. One more thing. In our system, encryption keys are synchronized from the very beginning when the ID is actually formed. Okay. So we don't ever have to worry about, oh, does the two devices actually have the same time, or none of that. Okay. In the biological analogy, for the cars, see, cars actually depend on this CAN bus data bus system, where any device that is attached to this CAN bus is able to see the information that comes into that data bus. Okay. So how do we actually achieve end-to-end encryption? Well, in the bat world, when they go out hunting at nighttime, they actually send out echo, right? How does the bat know that the echo that it is listening to is actually his own echo and not their other 1,000 other compatriots, right? Somebody actually studied this, and they found that they actually have a wide range of frequencies that they can work from. So if they hear a sound with certain frequency from their compatriots, then they would actually hop over to a much different range of frequencies, and they send that information out. So it knows how to recognize its own echo among thousands of other signals. And that is exactly what we are doing when we are sending the information out to the individual ECU unit. Okay. Only that particular ECU unit would be able to decipher the information and be able to generate a proper decryption key. So I have some people say, hey, you're not doing anything different. You are using AES algorithm. You're utilizing a SHA-256 message digest function. So where's the new invention in it? Well, the thing is, proof is in the pudding. We actually have a software that demonstrates that we can actually send with the cybersecurity triad fully intact, and without ever having to leverage the PKI or the KMS, because we can generate decryption key and encryption key. And do we have a time, or are we out? Okay, so we actually have a demonstration of actual real software that actually does this firmware update, but I'm out of time, so I can't show it to you. Sorry. So that's lunch. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much.